All right, guys. So for this next video or practice drawing, we're going to do 3-point perspective. Now, 3-point perspective is a little bit trickier. I do want you to try it and do the practice drawing, but then on your final, you can choose either 2-point or 3-point. So more advanced students might want to do 3-point if they like the idea of it or the style of it. Um, so 3-point perspective is a lot more extreme of an angle. And typically you would use it if you want to do like an ant's eye view where like you're really close to the ground looking up at something, or if you're doing a bird's eye view and you're like really up high looking down. And if you look on Google Classroom, I have 3-point perspective examples, and you'll see most of my examples are ant's eye view, but there is like one bird's eye view, and it all depends on your vanishing points. So um, just to kind of recap, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw so we'll start with a horizon line. So now you'll notice my setup looks a little bit different here. So with 3-point perspective, what ends up happening is your vanishing points will end up off the page. So pretend that this white paper is like your piece of drawing paper, okay? And then this area on the outside is just extra space where the vanishing point could go. So typically what I would do is if you have like the small pieces of practice paper, just put like a small piece of practice paper on the top. So like you have some room up above the paper, put some on the side. So here, let me just do this really quick. So let me grab a rectangle tool and let's pretend that, I don't know. Yeah, let's pretend this is my practice paper. So if you just took like a small piece of practice paper and just like layered it underneath, um, so that you could, let's see, like that. Okay, yeah. And let's say you took a little piece of practice paper and laid it underneath on the side like this, and you did the same thing on this side here. Okay. I know this is kind of weird because I'm showing you digital, but I think you get the idea. So let's say, Um, so if you just had like a piece of paper that you could set underneath, so this orange represents just like a separate piece of paper that you're laying underneath your big one that just sticks out of the side, right? So the whole idea is you just want to have a room on the outside of your paper where you could draw or make a mark so that you know that you'd have like a vanishing point out there, okay? So then what we would start for 3-point perspective is we would start with a horizon line. So I'm going to do it at about the midpoint, maybe a little bit lower than that, just straight across. So we'll start with a horizon line. Actually, I'm going to draw it through my paper. That would make more sense, right? Because you'd want it to extend out onto that area that you've created. Okay, so something like that. Okay. Now I'm just going to do a quick little review here. Okay, so um, what we're going to do is we're going to start with two vanishing points, and we'll put one on the far left out here. So it should be like off the page to the left. Let's see. There it goes. So let's put a vanishing point out there. We'll put a vanishing point out here, like somewhere kind of far away. Okay. Now just to do a quick little recap, because that might be useful here. If I'm just doing a square, now don't actually draw this. This is just me like re-explaining. But remember, if you're doing 1-point perspective, you would just start with the shape, and then you would just draw the corners down to one vanishing point. So you do that, and that's how you'd have like that floating cube out there, right? So that's 1-point perspective, and it only uses one of the vanishing points. Okay. Then remember the general rule with 2-point is you would start with just a vertical line somewhere, and then you take the top and bottom of that vertical line and you use both vanishing points. So it would be something like this. If I were to draw like that same cube floating in the air in 2-point, it'd be something like this. And then basically what would happen is I would do vertical lines to cut it off. Once again, you're not drawing this. This is just me re-going over 1 and 2-point really quick. And then I would take the corners here like to the vanishing points and they would cross. It would be something like that. So that would be like my floating 2-point perspective cube. Okay. And you see how it uses two vanishing points, like it used the right side and it used the left side. Okay. And so what 3-point perspective is, it's very similar to 2-point, but instead of doing a vertical line to start, what would have been a vertical line now uses a third vanishing point. And so when you're doing 3-point perspective, the third vanishing point would be either up above or down below. Okay. So for this example, we're going to put it up above. So what you're going to do is just up here on this piece of paper that you have underneath on top, you're just put another vanishing point up here somewhere. Okay, so I'm just gonna do something like that. So there's my third vanishing point. Now what's gonna happen is when you do the vanishing point up top, this is gonna give you the anti-view. It's gonna be like you're down low to the ground looking up at something, okay? If you wanted a bird's eye view, you would have the vanishing point down underneath, okay? But otherwise, it's the same for both, okay? So now, like our other drawings, we are going to make the city street corner idea, but we're going to do it in 3-point perspective. So what I'm going to do now is when we did 2-point, we had like just a vertical line here for the corner of the building. Well, now instead of a vertical line, we're actually going to use the third vanishing point on the top. So you're going to line up your ruler with that third vanishing point and just kind of pick an angle that you want that building to kind of come out. So let's just do something like that. Okay. So there's my first line. And then I'm going to take the bottom of this line to both vanishing points on the left and right, like this. Okay. Then I'm just going to pick wherever I want the top of that building to be. So maybe it's right here, and I'm going to take that to the right and left vanishing points like this. Okay. Okay. So now there's the start of my building. Okay. Now in 2-point, we would do a vertical line on the left and right to cut it off. Well, in 3-point, you don't do that. So pretty much like as you get if you move to the higher amount of vanishing points, it becomes more and more restrictive. So like when we were 1-point, we could freely draw the shape and then just take the lines to one vanishing point, right? So you could have vertical and horizontal lines and then also lines going to the vanishing point. In 2-point perspective, you pretty much only had vertical lines and then lines going to the vantage point. Now with 3-point, you're not really ever going to use just plain horizontal or vertical lines. Every line that's a part of a main structure and perspective is all going to use a vanishing point. So you just try to use a vanishing point for everything. So to cut this off on the left and right, we're basically replacing vertical lines with the third vanishing point. So I would draw a line from the third vanishing point and it would come out like this. And it's going to look kind of silly at first, but you have to remember this is like a low angle and we're like looking up at something. Okay. So the angles are going to be a lot more extreme when we do 3-points. So if I just draw two lines coming out like this, okay, and if I take my eraser, we can kind of mark out here so we can see. But this would be like my first building. Okay. Let me just go ahead and just get this erased out a little bit. This part erased out a little bit. So then you'd kind of erase those parts out and you can kind of see the building standing out here. Okay. All right. Good. So then what I would do is just like before, let's say I want to do a building next to it that's the same height. I can keep this guideline, but now when I draw the next building, I kind of pick a spot and I use the vanishing point. So if I just come from this third vanishing point straight down, I can decide, how far apart I want the gap between buildings to be. So let's put it like right here. Okay. So we've got that. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw another line to cut off the front face of the building. So let's just do like this, but it's all coming from that third vanishing point. Okay, and I'll take my eraser. I know this seems kind of tricky right now. I'm just going to erase that little line out there, and I'm going to erase this line in here. Okay, now what happens is this corner right here and this corner here are kind of it's like there's an alley in between the buildings, right? So now this is going to be the bottom edge of this building. And so I'm going to take this bottom edge actually to the right vanishing point like this. And it's going to shoot out like that. And I'm going to take this corner to the right vanishing point, and it's going to shoot down kind of like that. Okay. And then now if I start to erase some of these lines out, it should start to look a little bit more like it makes sense. It's still going to be like a very extreme angle though. Okay, so we got that. We've got that, and then we're going to get rid of this line in between. Okay. All right, so you can see it looks like two buildings next to each other, right? So then what I can do is, let's say I want a building to be a little bit shorter. So what I would do is I could just start the same way. I could go from the third vanishing point and just figure out where my building is going to come over here. Okay, like that. Okay. But now what I'll do is instead of this being the top of the building, I could either raise it or I could lower it. So maybe I'm going to raise it, make this building taller. I'm going to start up here actually, and have that be the top of my building, go down to the vanishing point like that. And then this side, the top corner here is going to go down to this vanishing point. But obviously when it collides with my building here, It's gonna get cut off there, and then this is gonna be the bottom edge of my new building, and that's gonna come back this way towards the left vanishing point, like that. And then I need another line across here to do the front facing of that new building, like that. And I know it like, and you can pause and just go slow step by step here. But then what happens once I erase these out, it will look a little, it'll make a little bit more sense. So let me just try to erase some of these lines out here a little bit. And I'll just grab my eraser tool here. Okay, so erase this out, this out, this out. And perspective is one of those things, like some people like visually and spatially, like they really get it. They understand the three-dimensional part. It kind of makes sense. Other people will struggle with this. So don't feel bad if you're like kind of struggling a little bit. Um, it can be a hard concept to grasp. And what I find is there are very different types of artists, right? And some artists really that are like really loose and expressive, they might not like this as much because it's very structured. It's a very structured way to draw. But some of you that maybe are very mathematical and you're very technical, you could actually do really well at this. And like if you like these types of drawings, like you like being an architect could be a career path for you because this is kind of like doing a CAD drawing, right? In a way. So some of you like do CAD and things like that. Like this definitely relates to doing CAD drawings. What I would say this relates more to is more like doing a concept drawing. So like for example, when the school, our new high school was being built, right? Before they started construction on it, um, they did concept drawings where they were like perspective drawings of what the building would look like, and that would be there to complement the floor plans and things that architects were designing. So it's a nice visual thing to have. So you can see the buildings kind of look like they're leaning in and squishing in. It's like pretend we're like laying on the ground, like looking up at the building. Like that's the extreme angle you're going to get here with 3-point perspective. Okay. Drawing windows would be the same as 2-point. You just remember, you just replace the vertical line with this third vanishing point. So if I were to do windows on this side, I would just go from the vanishing point and I would just kind of sketch out the area where my windows would go. Okay. And then I just use the correct vanishing point here. So this wall is going to the right. So I just make sure that this goes to the right. Kind of lines up that way. Top of the windows would be here, kind of going down to the right vanishing point that way. And then once again, I can just draw more lines to split up where the windows are going to go. So this is realistically, like, I don't think, like, if you understand 2-point perspective, 3-point perspective really isn't that big of a leap because it's basically the exact same thing as 2-point. You just are replacing your vertical lines with that third vanishing point. So it's not really that bad. Okay, and then once again, I would go here to the right vanishing point and then do all of these lines for the window. So it'd be like right vanishing point. I'll just do a couple of them. We won't go crazy here. Um, the thing you have to be careful about though with 3-point is that you do have the perspective running upward. So you have to remember as objects. So before what we were concerned about is if objects went to the left towards this vanishing point, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. They go to the right towards that vanishing point, they get smaller. Now though, if they're going upward, they're also getting smaller. So the gap between these two windows should be small, then it should get bigger in this gap. So if I'm going to draw another set of windows, I got to make sure the gap gets bigger. So that is actually a pretty big difference because in 2-point perspective, the windows could all be an even height. But now, because we have that third perspective, we do have to make sure that we're showing that distance here on the height as well. And then this one might be a little bit bigger in between. Okay. So you can see as the windows come down, they should be short and then longer, 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 longer until you get to the end like that. And then you can take your eraser and figure out what windows you want to keep. Whoops, actually, that's bad. I should probably erase the top section out here. So if I were to like take this top section out, and then I could say that this might be a window here. And so you can just draw it as a big checkerboard to start and then erase out what you don't want, and you can kind of reveal the windows you're going to keep. So then you can see I just pulled out 2 windows there. Now I could keep it like if I wanted it really full to have like all the windows, I could do that. But then yeah, then I would kind of erase this out here and you can kind of see how it's breaking apart. Um, whoops, that was wrong right there. Oh, and I just undid all that. That's okay. Yeah. So you can kind of you get the idea, right? erase that out, erase that out, erase that out, erase this out. And you can kind of see how the windows are coming apart. So that's basically it. So just remember these vertical lines are all going to that vantage point. So you can see they're just very, very tall, very, very structured. So we could do the exact same drawing as our 2 point, right? And if I wanted to add like another building back here, I could. And because it's such an extreme angle, like I would just make some line, like wherever I want to put this new building. Maybe I want to put it like right here. Just make sure that that line's coming from the vanishing point. And that's just a matter of deciding how tall it is and then using your other vanishing points. But every line that I'm using here pretty much is using a vanishing point. So I'm going to go down to this vanishing point. Maybe I'll have it be a little bit skinnier like that. And then I use my third vanishing point to draw like the outer edges of that new building I'm making. Okay, so like something like that. Okay, so you can see how I just hid like a third skinny building just hiding back there, right? And the sidewalk would be the same thing. So like that little sidewalk piece, you remember we come from the, instead of doing a vertical though, we come down from the vanishing point like that. And you just want to make sure you keep that angle correct. With your pencil, you just draw like a little line down there. And then it's same as 2 point from there. Use the vanishing points. I probably made this a little bit too wide, but that's okay. Actually, no, this being wide is good because we're really low to the ground, right? So this sidewalk actually would be pretty wide down here. Okay, so we go from there. Whoops. Oh, that's fine, I guess. Accidentally moved it, but that works. Then like that. And then once again, yeah, the sidewalk literally is exactly the same as in 2 point. The only part that's different is just this little line right there technically isn't a vertical. It's coming from that third vanishing point. But yeah, 3 point perspective is pretty cool. I kind of like the extreme angles you get and all of that. So we'll just use this as a base. And then once again, we still want that light source. So you notice that common theme. I want a light source. So decide where your light source is coming from. And then just like before, if I wanted to do, so once again, you could paint bucket, do the shadows. And I've just been consistent, like doing it on the right side. So now the right side here is going to be lighter. So what I might say is, this might be the lighter side over here, and then the darker side might be over here. Okay, actually, well, yeah, that one, that side there would probably be dark too, just because it's like an alleyway. But then what I could do is remember the sun or your light source becomes almost another vanishing point where you could like draw out from the corners here and have an area that might be shaded in. So if I just went out from the corners here like that, coming from my light source, and then you could just go ahead and paint bucket in and make these areas a little bit darker. I mean, that's probably a little intense going that dark, right? We'll go back with like something like this. But yeah, something like that. If I paint this bottom one, it's going to leak out. But yeah, you can see that it would just be this area here. You wouldn't do this outer area. But then this building would cast its own shadow out that way. So yeah, I would like you to do at least, 3 to 4-ish buildings, something like I did. Put like fully shaded on maybe at least two of them. Maybe try to do the sidewalk like you did, have a light source. If you really want to, like I said, if you want to flush this out and make it like a really cool detailed drawing, you can. But because it's the practice drawing, if you don't want to spend as much time on it, so you can move on to the final, I just want you to attempt it, and I can see that you've tried drawing something with 3 point perspective. Okay, so that's pretty much the practice drawing there.